Okay, the next section is listed as chapter 18, going back to university at the age of 40. Now, going back to university, to law school was a drastic decision. Drastic in the sense that I was not a kid anymore, but if I wanted to work as an attorney or practice as an attorney, I had to qualify myself by getting a B Proc degree. B Proc being the abbreviation for Baccalaureus Procurationis, the term for this specific degree, a 4-year degree. Okay, I already had a 3-year Baccalaureus Juris degree, but that did not allow me to practice as an attorney. The best I could do was to work as a lower court magistrate, and that just wouldn't do it for me. Okay, now going back to university, another reason why I say it was a serious or a drastic decision is one must keep in mind that although the safari business took me away from home for long times and away from my children, away from my spouse, we had to look reality in the face is that it took get good care of us financially. So doing without that income, going back to university meant a serious drop in income and associated living standards. That was what we had to face. Now, the closest university was the University of Pretoria, which was a 2-hour drive from Nailstrom. That meant that I would drive every day 2 hours there, 2 hours back. It's 4 hours on the road. But I made the decision, and luckily, there was an opportunity for me to join a law firm and work for a attorney who was at school with me, at university with me, and we also worked at the same company as messengers of the court. So we knew each other from university days. But anyhow, the position was there, and because he asked me if I don't want to come, and that's one of the serious reasons I decided to join his law firm or work with him for him. And his one partner, Herman Brits, and I were very good friends. So for me, it was an ideal situation, if you can call something like that ideal. But, the good part of it was having had a baccalaureus, B Juris, baccalaureus Juris degree, is the fact that I did get credits for numerous of the subjects that I had already passed with that degree, but the remaining subjects that I had to pass, like one of them, the biggest obstacle was accounting. I didn't have accounting at school, so I had to qualify myself, and at first year level of accounting, because attorneys needed accounting as a subject, seeing that they had two business accounts, or lawyers had two accounts, checking accounts, a business account and a trust account. Trust account, of course, the client comes to see you, he would provide you with a deposit or a retainer, whatever you would like to call it, and that would go into the trust account. That was not your money. It was only after you have done a certain number of billable hours that you could do a debit note and debit the trust account and transfer that amount that you have just debited to the business checking account. business checking account. Yeah. And of course, okay, then that could be applied to you or to the firm's credit. One thing that I have to stress with this trust account and business account is the fact that the Law Society of South Africa was very strict with monies that were deposited into a business trust account. The accounts were audited at least once a year, and if there was any discrepancy found, for example, negligent monies used negligently, monies that were in the trust account, you were disbarred. Period. That was just whether you did it deliberately or negligently, accidentally, whatever the case may be. If there was a discrepancy in your trust, in your books, you were in serious trouble. Now, one of the attorneys, Johan Botha, as I said, was behaving funny. And we just could not, he would some days just not show up for work, or if he showed up, he would hardly talk to anybody. And we just couldn't get behind what was going on. If his wife knew what was going on, she didn't want to talk about it. But one day, I was standing outside by the front door. It was probably around about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, standing by the front door. I was having a smoke break in the days when I was still smoking. And I saw Johan driving past with his BMW. And of course, he was driving slowly. And he was looking at the firm, towards the firm. And he saw me there and he waved, but he waved in a very casual way, not as if he, maybe nonchalantly waving, but he was not the jovial Johan that I knew. Anyhow, waved back, that was it. And when I went inside, I said to Herman, I just saw Johan Botha drive by. Have you heard anything? No, he hasn't heard anything from me. Anyhow, that was it. Maybe an hour later, Johan got a phone call from a train driver that Johan knew, and mentioning to Johan that he had seen Johan got a phone call from a train driver whom he knew, saying that he saw Johan's car in a densely wooded area. Of course, the railway line passed through that area, but he saw, knowing Johan, he saw Johan's car. Is there anything the matter? What was going on? So we decided, well, there's something wrong with this. And we got in my car, and that was, Herman and I, we got in my car, and I knew exactly where the train driver said and described where he saw Johan's car. And I drove to that area. Lo and behold, we found Johan's car, engine running, Johan inside the car, dead. So he had connected the pipe to the exhaust pipe of the car and into the window inside the car. And of course, he died of carbon monoxide poisoning. Dead. Okay, now, what now? Those were the days before there was any cell phone, so We had to leave everything just like that, drove to the police station, and told them that we found the body there, etc., etc. Now, we suspected what was going on, but nobody wanted to say that. But when we found this Johan dead in this car, we immediately sort of confirmed our own suspicions that, yes, there was a problem with trust money. And obviously, the reason for Johan's strange behavior. Yes, and now a day or three later, the books were audited by the Law Society, and our suspicions were confirmed. There was a serious discrepancy in the trust account. Now, the problem with that is Herman, who was a partner to the business, was then, of course, liable for that difference in, or liable for the discrepancy in the trust accounts. And besides being liable for that amount, he had to prove to the Law Society that it happened without his knowledge, and that he was not part and parcel to this theft, because that's exactly what it was. Trust money that disappeared, and it was nothing but theft of trust money. Oh, well, there we were. And Herman decided then, of course, after the funeral, he decided to move to altogether new, what do you call it, new premises, and just start afresh. He took over all the books from the current partnership, and then continued with everything. After he had advised all the clients, and the advisors told him, no, keep the client, continue with the work that you have. Now let's get back to my studies. This was a serious thing. I mean, after work at 4:30 in the afternoon, I had to drive to Pretoria to go and attend class. And it was a serious issue doing so, because it's a 2-hour drive, then go and attend classes for 2 or 3 hours, and then drive back. So I got back home 11 o'clock at night. That was a tough one. Came November, October, November was exam time. But what was I going to say? Oh, okay. Now, come November, I knew that I passed my classes. I knew, Shaq, you either passed it or you didn't. But when you are confident enough to say, no, I'm pretty sure I passed pretty damn good. Okay, so in those days, you could either have the results mailed to you, or if you didn't want them mailed to you, you could, after a certain date, the results would be, I wouldn't say nailed, or displayed in the notice board of the university. And you could look up your results by your student number. Now, as I say, I knew I passed everything for sure, and I knew I passed accounting, but I was still kind of hesitant to go and look up my marks, my results. So we and Tia and I were in in Pretoria, and we stopped by the notice by the university, and I asked her to go on, please, and she must go and look at the results for me. Anyhow, I'll wait in the car. Now that must have been the longest 30 minutes of my life. Because I'm sitting there on pins and needles, come back, but on the other hand, I don't want her to come back. Bring me my results, but I don't want you to bring my results. Anyhow, she came walking back with a wraparound smile. And then I knew, okay, now I can start relaxing. Lo and behold, with my results, I couldn't care for other subjects, but I just wanted to know accounting. How did it go with accounting? My accounting results were off the scoreboard. Never in my life did I have such high marks for an exam. I got 98% for accounting. And then I thought to myself, but where did I make a mistake? That it's 98 and not 100. I was not going to make an issue about that. It was just just a side remark or a side joke I shared with Tia. But as I say, never ever in my life have I ever come anywhere close with those kind of results. Ay, 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 ay. Well, one thing that I must say, and I forgot to say that a little bit earlier, with this accounting, there was no such thing as social life for me. In the weeks, I had to drive in the evenings to go to attend class. Come weekends, I had to practice accounting. I did not know anything about accounting, so I had to practice accounting. And I kept myself busy with that so that I knew that I was up to date with what I was doing. And it was just after the second year, we were sitting there at the office. And the next thing, in comes my secretary showing Professor Frans van der Merwe, the dean of the faculty, showing him the way into my office. And of course, I was, what is the dean of the office? Look here, why is he coming here? Anyhow, he just swung by. He had a ranch in the area. So it was a Friday afternoon. He swung by, came to my office, and he says, no, he wanted to come and discuss my final score. And yeah, now what? Why does the dean of the faculty walk in here? And he jokingly said, you know, there's just one, you did okay, but you did not do very well with your law of estates. I said, what? I thought I did okay. Then he joked to me, he says, no, you did the bloody best in the class, so relax. And it was a Friday afternoon. And Herman and I decided, okay, well, we didn't have any more clients to see that afternoon. Let's call it a day. It was something like 3 o'clock. Let's call it a day. Close the shop and let's go to the police resort, which is the only place in the area which had a decent restaurant. So he called his wife Ria, I called Tia, and there we went. Herman, myself, Prof. van der Merwe, and our wives. But what was so funny was, I must remember that Herman was also a student of Professor van der Merwe years before. So it was just so funny that here two ex-students, if I can call myself an ex-student now, and Herman and our respective typists or secretaries, whatever you want to call them, there we were all having a beer together. That was kind of a highlight of my year to of my 2 years going back to university at that age. But it was great. It was during that time. Well, soon it was graduation day, and both my parents had already been deceased. But at least on my side, Tia's mother-in-law, I know my mother-in-law and Tia's mother attended the graduation ceremony. Now, those were the days when the winds of change started blowing in South Africa. Soon the infamous words of Sir Harold Macmillan, as a speech that he made to the South African Parliament years ago in 1960, addressed it as the winds of change, meaning that the decolonization of Africa was rapidly unfolding. And whether we liked it or not, the growth of national consciousness was a political fact. Nelson Mandela, the president of the ANC, served 27 years in prison altogether. He studied law at the University of Fort Hare, which was the University of Fort Hare in the Cape area. As well as, I think he also studied at the University of Witwatersrand before he started working as a lawyer in Johannesburg. There he became involved in Africa politics, and of course he was joining the ANC in 1943, and he worked his way up the ranks. After the National Party's whites-only government established apartheid system, he, of course, was part and parcel of the ANC's commitment to get rid of the Nationalist Party as government of the country of South Africa. And he was repeatedly arrested for seditious activities, and he was unsuccessfully prosecuted in the 1956 treason trial. However, he was indeed influenced by Marxism, and he secretly joined the banned South African Communist Party. And with the Umkhonto we Sizwe, the military wing of the ANC, he was a co-founder of that. Now, we have to see it in the light of what was going on in the country. I always said, I am against apartheid, but I was also against violence and the overthrowing of the government by violent means. So yes, I was pro-change, but it had to come in a organized political way. Okay, a little bit of a contradiction in terms there, because how can it happen in a political way if the blacks didn't have the vote? Anyhow, eventually President what was his name? De Klerk. F.W. de Klerk became president, and he released or saw to the release of Nelson Mandela in 1990. The apartheid era was soon to be something of the past, but many folks, including myself, feared the growing right-wing resistance of the Afrikaner resistance movement, known as the Afrikaner Weerstandsbeweging, and the growing possibility of a civil war. I would not say that I was afraid of that happening, but after having gone through the war in Rhodesia, which eventually resulted in the new independent country named Zimbabwe, it was something that I could not completely ignore. Amongst all this political turmoil, I received an offer from the leading law practice in Nylstroom, owned and operated by a fine gentleman with the name of Boet Skeepers. And the offer was to join his law firm as an attorney, as a partner, not just as an associate, but I was offered the opportunity to join his practice as a partner, not even having to contribute a single penny towards that partnership. That's not something that happens every day, and I was extremely flattered. Life, however, has its way of unfolding in ways you'd never plan. And as I would soon discover, my journey, was far from over, and definitely not in the way that I was planning or foresee. Okay, now the next chapter is chapter 19.